Peace, what it is. I'm chilling, reading. I want to share some stuff with you from this book. You know what I'm saying? Keep it going like always, anyway. So this chapter is called Crazy Soup, for whatever fucking reason. I think, it's about the mixture of them in America. And all this, I'm just going to jump to a few parts. I really didn't prepare for this. I just finished this book, so I figured I'd just do a little video real quick. Whatever you get from it, what you get from it, what you don't, it's on you. So I'm gonna start with this. I'm gonna go and read it out. Fuck it, we ain't doing nothing. Y'all ain't doing nothing. Y'all ain't got nothing else to do. In 1520s, a solitary man constructed a small chapel on the western highway of Mexico City. Every time I Mexico. Just beyond the causeway that led to the city's western gates. No description of the chapel survives, but it's probably just two whitewashed adobe rooms. One for the shrine itself with an altar and a cross, one for the man who built it and maintained it. Nearby were a few small fields on which he grew crops. The structure was known as Chapel of Martyrs. Okay. A stretch, right? Yeah, okay. We'll go, when I get to the back, you'll see. It may have been the first Christian church in mainland America. All right. The man in the chapel was named Juan Guerrero. Almost the only thing we know about the background of this Spanish man is that he was not Spanish. And his name was not Guerrero. All right. What that tell you? They lied to you about history, right? Okay. The first hint of his existence in the historical records comes from 1477 when what is it? J.O. That's a Mexican name. Y'all know it. The future king and current regent of Portugal granted freedom to an African slave who called himself, what is that? Juan. Okay, Juan is Portuguese equivalent to Juan. However you pronounce that one is Portuguese equivalent for Juan or John. Enslaved as a boy and taught Portuguese, John has served as an interpreter on several slaving ventures before jumping ship. In Guinea, yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it, or southern Mauritania, from a desire to be free and not to return again to being a slave. Yet Guerrero didn't want to be free in Africa. Instead, he boldly sought to return to Portugal, possibly because he was a Berber, a lighter-skinned North African ethnic group that was often at odds with the darker African groups of the South. I owe this suggestion to Alistair Sanders and the historian who found Guerrero's freedom papers. Guerrero must have been a valuable interpreter. The future king made him absolutely free like any other Christian Portuguese, on the condition that he continue working in the slave trade. Was Juan Guerrero the Juan Guerrero who later built the chapel in Mexico? Most likely not, according to Matthew Rethal in Pennsylvania State University historian who also studied Guerrero's life. It would have meant that he was almost 60 years old when he came to Mexico, but the name Guerrero was uncommon among the tens of thousands of slaves in the Iberian Peninsula. It is likely that the two men were connected. The Spanish Juan could have been Juan or Juan's cousin. Could have been Juan's son or cousin, excuse me. Restall suggests. Okay, so the historian says probably not the same guy, but they probably related. So that means he probably was an African. You get it? Okay. Was Juan Guerrero in Mexico hold on. Was Juan Guerrero in Mexico one of the black slaves brought from Africa by the newly freed Berber or mulatto Juan Guerrero, who also received the name Juan and adopted his master's surname when he was turned freed? I'll show you this real quick. An African man, possibly Juan Guerrero, holds Hernan Cortez's horse. Cortez, the conquistador, feathered hat in hand, approaches Montezuma, which I showed in the last video that I got off Cedar Ducaterius, Islam to the Moor, that Montezuma was a Moor, paramount leader of the Triple Alliance. The Triple Alliance is what they call the Aztec Empire. Okay, like his father, uncle, or former master, Juan Guerrero had an eye for main chance rather than rather than returning in Portugal, he crossed the Spanish border, arriving just after Cologne. That's Cologne is Christopher Columbus, if you don't know. Revealed the existence of America to Europe. He spent 7 years in Seville, center of Spain, growing American trade. Something of his personality intended by the name. A predecessor chose Wonka, which means more Johnny Good looking. Da 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 da. My point, really, honestly, was just the fact that this African cat has a Spanish name. Just like I showed you in previous videos, if you Google Christopher Columbus was black, you'll see that he was a mixed breed. All right. So when the Spanish came over here to conquer us, you understand, it's not pale skinned European people. We talking about mixed. We talking about you talking about the Mexicans of today. You understand what I'm saying? They are a mixture of pale skinned Europeans and Aboriginal Europeans who came over here and mixed with Aboriginal Americans, and that created the Mexican that you know today. All right, but let's just keep going. Let's go somewhere else in this book. Go to the very back, and I'll show you this real quick so you understand. You understand? Despite its problems, the scheme has a virtue of allowing me to avoid another intractable issue: race. Race is part of any discussion today of the interactions of people of European, African, Asian, and Indian descent. But at the dawn of globalization, modern concepts of race didn't exist. You understand? The whole black white thing. Fighting off the yoke of African Islamic empires, the inhabitants of the Iberian Peninsula didn't, as a rule, kill or enslave blacks. They killed and enslaved Moors. Do you understand what he's saying? Okay, black people are Moors. You wasn't black till later on, after you were Moors, or infidels, or idolaters. At the beginning, slavery had little racial baggage. The questions that preoccupied Spaniards was not whether black or red people could be enslaved, but whether Christians could be put in bondage. Heathens, heretics, and criminals of any color were fair game. The term Negro, a Portuguese word for black, didn't come into wide use until 1450. So why you all cast talking about we ain't black, we Negroes. I mean, we ain't Moors, we Negroes. Wasn't a Negro till the 1450s. All right, although Negro referred to skin color is mostly an ethnic descriptor, much like Irish or Malay. An analogy may be Agmon Fugenese. Probably pronounced that word wrong. Word for redhead. Agmo was used to label Dutch, even though most didn't have red hair. Later, Negro came to mean slave and was used by Africans themselves. As historian Lyndon Haywood and Thomas Thornton have noted, Central Africans insisted that European visitors use one Portuguese word for black, Negro, to describe slaves, and a second alternative Portuguese word for black, petro, to describe free Africans. So you see, they didn't kill and enslave blacks. They killed and enslaved Moors. You understand what I'm saying? It wasn't about black and white and red. It was about that nigga's a Moor. That's who we fighting. You understand what I'm saying? That's really what it is today. But let's just act like that ain't. We just act like it ain't. We act like it's black and white, but it's really Moors being aboriginal to earth by law. The land, not that you can own land, because even we didn't believe in owning land, but we were the first people to own the land, so it's ours in that sense. You understand what I'm saying? We were first there, and we allowed these people to do their thing, and they took advantage, kindness for weakness, kind of a thing. So just so you can see real quick, so y'all don't be wanting to believe what Morris tell you. The origin of the word slave from Slavic countries. In some sense, it was nothing new. Slavery had existed in Iberian Peninsula since at least the Roman times. At first, many slaves had been taken from Slavic countries, the origin of the word slave. At first, from Slavic countries. Okay, we did it to them first, is the point. That is the point. You need to know. What is this? Oh man, my video, man. I ain't got enough space on my phone to do all this. I guess I didn't been rambling too much. But if you can see this real quick before it's cut off on me, the Great Transformation. If you can read, I'll let you can. But I'm gonna just show you. America was an extension of Africa rather than Europe until the late 19th century. The Great Transformation, a turning point in the story of our species, was wrought largely by African hands. The crowds thronging the streets in the new cities were mainly African crowds. The farmers growing rice and wheat in new farms were mainly African farmers. The people rowing boats on the river, most were mainly African people. You see what I'm saying? The 19th century saw another even larger wave of migration, one dominated by Europeans. These people have not been on this continent as long as you think. Not in mass. Not in mass. There's more here. I want to talk about how the Africans mixed with Indians, but I'm out of space. So, peace. I hope you got something from it.